the meeting tonight. Thank you so much for coming. On behalf of the Board of Selectmen, we want to thank you for coming. We have some school committee people here. We have obviously our superintendent. We call him Dr. B. It's a lot easier to pronounce, spell, and all those type of things. We're going to have probably a host of questions. Hopefully, please do not refrain from asking anything. As my second grade teacher said, probably wish she didn't say it to me, no question.
No dumb questions.
Yeah, there are no dumb questions, and then I took up the whole period of questions. But, and I mean that very sincerely. Pro, con, we want to get everything out now, while we have the time, in case he's not telling us at town meeting floor, we can't debate this, we can't do this, and it's not, and it's out of order. So there will be a, is Casey?
She just left. She's gonna come down for her.
Yeah, okay, because there are some questions about the whole procedure at town meeting, and she's here to answer those questions too, which is awesome. That went very well when we did this last Saturday, or the Saturday before. So, without further ado, please.
So first I want to thank Tom West Newbury, of course, the selectmen for letting me be here tonight. I'll admit, I feel like I'm a car salesman right out in front of you right now. And I just need you to know that is not what I am. I'm not here to sell you on something, I'm just here to inform you where we are with the project, why we're where we are, and because we have the audience we have, just ask questions as we go along. And I know I was at someone's house doing a presentation, and the question came up, how big are the pipes that are you using for the water coming off of from the Groveland West Newbury side and into the school? Well, I'm not an engineer, I don't have that answer, so when I get questions like that, I go and I find out the answer. The next time I see those people, I give them the answer that I finally got. So anytime, any questions you have, Brad, you guys know Brad Dorr, West Newbury resident, he's also the architect for this project. But he's here as well because there'll be questions that coming up that we might have that I can't answer, but hopefully he can. So if you've seen this presentation, it's changed. Some of the things on here are very similar, but there's going to be, we have 3 videos now. So there's 2 videos that I just put out this afternoon, so you guys will all be seeing them for the first time in a public audience. We gave some people a sneak peek preview at the walkthroughs last week. But this slide kind of encapsulates the journey for this project. In 2014, that is when the application had been sent into the MSBA to apply to be a part of the whole entire process. And the MSBA is the Massachusetts School Building Authority, and their job is they go around, they find out what schools are in the toughest shape and need to be either redone or rehabbed. So in 2014, application goes in February of 2015, we were accepted into the process. And for those of you who have been around a long time, lived in town, like I was living in town back in '99, that was when the last time we were accepted into the process with the state, though not with the MSBA. The organization we were with at that time was the SBA. And the way the SBA worked was a little bit different. The SBA was sometimes political about who got to the top of the list, and that is not the case. The MSBA, they go through and it's based on the need of your community, the condition of your building. So it has been 4 years to get to this point. And that's not us going slow, and it's definitely not us going fast. That's us following the state's process that they've laid out for us to follow. And it's an important process because if they did not put us through that process, there'd be a lot of things that we would have skipped. As an example, I believe, Brad, you would actually know this initial project was going to be just a high school project. Well, when you start thinking about that, the state said, well, let's not do that. Maybe you should consider doing a 7 to 12. They didn't tell us to do a 7 to 12 project. They suggested it, and their rationale, which makes sense, is if you're going to build a high school, your middle school's only a little bit younger. You're going to have to come back later, and you're going to have to build a middle school. So when you think about that, they're saying you're going to have to go back to your taxpayers twice to get 2 buildings. You can do it with 1 because we don't want to pay that extra money. Your taxpayers aren't going to want to pay that extra money. So it made good sense. But again, the decision about what gets done is made by the community's thoughts on Okay, do you want to do a repair? Do you want to do a renovation? Do you want to do high school only? Or do you want to do a 7 to 12? And then when you do that, do you want to do a block building, or do you want to do something with a courtyard? So we had 8 options, and that was in the summer. In the summertime, this past summer, we had all the options, went out to the community, gave feedback, and eventually we ended up with the current model we're in now, which was accepted by the MSBA in the fall. So we fast forward to February. Once we get that approval, we get to start working, or Brad gets to start working on what does this going to look like on the outside. So in February, we get 2 new estimates that come in. Previously in July, there's an estimate that's solely based on a concept. So you type in how big the building's gonna be, there's some percentages, this much exterior, this much, on the exterior it's gonna be this much siding, this much windows, this many. It's just all guesstimates. There's nothing that's been planned out. So when you were hearing a number of $155 million and $1,000, that was all based on estimates. There was nothing that was hard data there that said this is what it's going to be. In February, you now have another estimator comes in, and then we now have a construction manager that comes in with his estimator, her estimator, and they come together, and they start doing their independent estimates, and then they come together. And that's where you read in the paper, okay, this price of the project has dropped down 9.1 million to 146.3. And the cost to each of the towns is going to be about $750, somewhere around $750. And again, those are still estimates, but that's with 20% of the project mapped out. So far more accurate than way back in the summer. So here we are now, unbelievably, because I made this slide a little while ago. Here we are now in April. So tomorrow, myself, Mr. Adams, who's the chairman of the school committee, and Jonathan Seymour, who's not only the high school principal, but also the chairman of the building committee, we go down into Boston. Brad will be there as well. And we meet with the MSBA board, which is chaired by the treasurer. And she will go over all of our projects with the board, and they will either give approval or they'll deny. Tomorrow, what we will find out, which we will announce Thursday evening at the building committee, is the exact percentage that they will reimburse us for this project. We know our foundation reimbursement is somewhere around 52.89, and we have a good idea of where it's going to be. But we think it's going to be, we're pretty confident it will be higher than 52.89. We think it'll be up into the mid-50s at least. So that's good news for us, because with that, every bit of reimbursement is less money that we have to pay. So then, of course, April 29th is the first meeting. Ms. Swallow is going to come back. I talked to her before. She'll come back at about quarter of 7 just to talk about how that meeting is going to be run. We require all three towns will have a meeting on the 29th. All 3 towns will have to be yes in order for that question about the high school to appear on the ballot. And then May 6th, the following Monday, all 3 towns again have to have a yes vote by simple majority, simple majority in each town. So 6 simple majority votes in order for the building project to be approved. So why are we here? Pictures. This building project, educationally, we all know the high school was built in '56. It's very much set up for a stand and delivery. You'll see pictures here. If you took tours of the building, you would have seen classrooms, including the one I was taught in, and the classroom I was a teacher in, working with students, where the lab table's in the front, the chairs are bolted down in the back, and they're bolted down because there's electricity running through them. This picture on the left is inside what's called the vault. The vault is the main source. The electricity comes in from 113, and this part right here, 13,000 volts coming into the school. No building should have 13,000 volts coming into the school, so I'm told. That's not a very safe thing, and this would never be allowed. We had a gentleman in Groveland who we asked if he'd be a part of the panel, because he does not have children. He's long since retired. He apparently worked for GE, so we gave him a tour of the building. And at the meeting, he said, look, I've been in a lot of buildings. I've been in buildings with electricity from the 20s, 30s, 40s, all the way up to the modern period. This was not acceptable back in the 50s when they put this in here. But we live off this. This is partially okay. What's not okay is outside of this room, if you ever took a tour, there's natural gas tubes right up here. There's the electrical panel is on the outside with all the circuits. And then you have the steam all in the same room. The doors to get into this area are blast doors, actual blast doors. So the people who put this together knew these things had a potential disaster. Here, you might find this in your house if you live in a really old house. That's insulation, fabric insulation. As soon as you touch it, it disintegrates. So if it's in the walls, you pull it out and replace it, you're replacing quite a bit. You would think that these pictures, this is our steam system here, you would hope and think that these pictures were anomalies, but this is the norm. This is what things look like. We are no longer allowed to turn the valves on and off. You have in your house the on-off for water, the yellow lever. We have some of those as well. And on some of those, we're not allowed to turn off either because it's just a corrosion. We have cast iron pipes. Cast iron and water and steam going through is going to create this rust. So there's been several incidents already of having steam, that room just filling up with steam. And again, inside that room is your main electrical panel and all that power. So it's just not a good setup. Another, you can read these quotes, but Tochi and Associates, that was the independent assessor who came in, and they talk about these systems being an imminent failure, imminent danger of possible failure, that they've long outlived their lifespan. So the question we typically get is, why wasn't this replaced? I can't answer that question for you. Someone might say, well, how come someone didn't maintain these? Well, here. 11 years ago, we hired a facilities director. Prior to that, you had a custodian in each building. They don't know much about plumbing at this level. They don't know much about electricity going under the grounds of the tubes. So when you take all that into consideration, what you're looking at is they're maintaining the building to the best of their ability, and even if they could go and replace it, and now you're dealing with abatements of asbestos, which asbestos is all throughout both the high school and the middle school. And they're also dealing with pipes going through concreted through the foundation. So to repair or replace anything now is too late. It's too late, and by too late, too expensive. There's a threshold. We would exceed that threshold, so we can't do it, even if we wanted to at this point. 25, 30 years ago, why didn't they do it? I don't know. I can't answer that question. It would have been expensive for sure. I don't know if anybody even knew it was a problem.
Dr. B,
Yes.
can I just say, can I make a point?
Sure.
Can you go back on that slide?
I think that was a picture in time, that was 4 years ago. These were taken in 2015, I mean, it shows 2015.
So a gentleman on the tour, he was walking, taking the tour with a cane, and he went out to touch some of the bolts. And I said to people, if you want to know the status of this room, on your way out, just look up. Because when you look up, you'll see a lot of these bolts. And there was another valve right above overhead. I mean, the head of the bolts, we've all done work where you strip a bolt because you put too much torque on it. These, you can touch with your finger and the heads of them will fall off. But he went to touch it with his cane and we had to stop him because those bolts come out and we have a problem. And again, it seems absurd. I think tomorrow we might, Thursday, we might actually have someone coming to do a videotape. So if someone wasn't able to go and take a tour, there's going to be, we might be videoing a full tour of it so you can have that same experience. Because I think when you're there, when you hear me talk about it, it's one thing, and again, there's no question, I understand that I probably come across as a car salesman, but when you're there in person, it's quick. You realize, I'm not trying to sell a car. It's a legitimate issue. So the pipes, again, it's cast iron. The hole on the right here, this was, we're great at digging holes. We can repair pipes. These pipes are not breaking at the connection points. They're fracturing in the middle of the pipe because they're old. And one of the things I learned on the tour, because our facilities director was there explaining these pipes also have a problem. It's like in a heart and arteries. You start off with a 4-inch, 6-inch pipe. Well, in time, at this point, you have all that corrosion, so that 4 inches shrinks down to 2 inches, changes the pressure, changes all sorts of dynamics in the system. And so we have quite a few breaks. We've had, this break was the 113 break that caused a huge frost heave. And this break also prevented us from any longer using West Newbury as a source of water. This was the main source coming through to the high school. We instead were able to go to the Junction House, which is right across the street from the schools. And there's both a West Newbury and a Groveland source. So we're able to switch over to Groveland, fortunately, to keep that water going. However, if you follow me on Twitter, you would have seen in January, I had a picture of a natural spring that has just appeared out front of the junior high or the middle school. And it was because of the Groveland pipe burst underneath there. So I have an excellent video of water just bubbling up. And I tell this story all the time, but I turned to Bob Danforth and I said, okay, is this our problem or is it Groveland's? And I knew it's our pipe, but it was 4 feet into 113. So it ended up being that Groveland had to pay for that, not us, which was nice. But this is not uncommon. And not only is this not uncommon, what's that? Oh, I used to live in Groveland. This is not uncommon. And this gets pretty bad. Mr. Seymour and I talked about this incident right here. This happened because same pipe situation, different pipe. Nurse's office, which is right in here. So West Newbury was patrolling the parking lot coming up, and they do a loop through. They noticed water coming underneath these doors. So they called it in. Apparently we showed up and were greeted with a significant amount of water. What had happened was underneath, pipe burst, and it's not right at the surface. It's deep in the ground like it's supposed to be. And all that silt and stuff was building up, and the water was building up, and the pressure was building up, and just blew through the tiles, went all the way down this hallway, and then down the steps, flooded in there, it flooded in the auditorium, and you can see all the dirt. This was the third time, again, if you've been here a while, you would have seen those classrooms that were out in front of the high school. There were 4 of them. This is the third time those 4 classrooms have been flooded. So they were irreparable, so those got taken down. But again, we can fix that pipe. It's a massive cleanup project, but we can fix it. So here's just in the classroom itself. Here you've got, you see, we are repairing these sinks in this lab, and these labs you have to think, or again, I taught in these, so even when I was teaching in these, starting 20 years ago, that was still 30 years, 40 years worth of bubble gum and all that other stuff they put down there that you try to get up, but you can't. So, you know, we've worked on repairing the pipes. The hoods, I'm gonna read this sign right here. So the teacher has to get up and climb on the side, which says, you must climb on counter to fan switch, because we don't have any functioning hoods. And we do what we can to try to connect so the kids still have that same learning opportunity. This is that same classroom. There's that fan and that sign right up there. This was a physical science classroom. This used to be right back here. This was a full hood that did function, but that stopped, I don't know, 15 years ago. So, you know, this also demonstrates the fixed lab spaces. You'll see in a little bit that the lab science rooms that the state allows are very smartly designed. All of your tables and sinks are around the perimeter. Everything in all classrooms has wheels on it. The chairs have wheels and the tables have wheels. We don't know what learning is going to look like 10, 15 years from now. What we know is we have to manipulate the classroom often based on what the students' needs are. So, I don't know if my classroom's on here. This is my old classroom. You can see the on the floors here. I was a student and teacher in this classroom. These used to be bolted into the ground. So when you have this bolted into the ground, I'm up front, and I'm teaching someone about different muscles, so I'm doing a dissection. The kids in the back, they can't see me. There's no chance. The state classroom, everyone, you can move those all the way around so everyone has a front row seat. And that's just for me, for science purposes and selfishly. If I wanted to do a wet lab, it was not going to happen in this classroom. I'd have to find a teacher to trade out, because around the perimeter, there are no sinks. There's one sink here, and in the front, there's one sink. But if you have 24 kids, you have teams of two, there's 12 different groups trying to compete for wet space. This is the new section of the building. So 95 is when this new section was completed. I graduated in 94, so the whole construction piece I'm somewhat familiar with as a student perspective. We didn't have any home games, all that stuff, everything was away. It didn't bother me too much, but I understand the advantage of home court advantage. These new wings are less structurally sound than the old part. Part of it is the old section of the building is so much asbestos in it. Asbestos is very hard to break, very good at maintaining its durability. But when it breaks and fractures, it's very, it's a huge carcinogen. We all know that. This new part of the building leaks. The roof leaks. You've got new electrical going into the old panel. You also have new plumbing. So those parts are good, but the roof constantly leaks. You would think we make this up, we don't, and we would never put a hole in the tile just to prove a point. Above here, think of a big tarp. So you got this drop ceiling, we put a big tarp underneath, and it acts like a funnel. So you got it all coming down to one spot to the tip of the funnel. And above here is the tip of the funnel, so it catches whatever the leaks are. So the tarp catches it, and the water all dumps into these buckets. So one of the first things I asked is, why didn't we just fix the leak? And the answer I got was, which one? We fixed this one, then there's another one and another one. If you've ever chased a leak in a school building, it's infuriating because there's something above it. The water will drip through, it'll hit a pipe, and it'll run somewhere, and it's always dropping in the same spot, but the leaks in a different area. So this did not exist when I was a student, but this is due to this is ground level, downstairs for class, or upstairs for class. So if you needed handicap accessibility, you would use that lift. Not only does it not work, it never worked. That was our gym, to solve our gym problem, which, and I'm just touching on some obvious things, there's far more. And I'm happy to talk about the great things in this building as well. And the students are always going to be the great things, our teachers are the great things in this building. Those tarps are up there, which were new for me to see when I came in the summer, because we have a lot of Saturday weekend games now. And when you were in the gym, that sun's just pouring right on through. It used to be, now they use argon, I think, in the windows to help refract some of the light. That's long since gone on these, so that's how we prevent solar glare. In the middle school, so this classroom looks exceptionally good. It is. It's in decent shape. One major problem, there was a leak. It leaked behind these concrete blocks, and the water came underneath the tiles. Okay. The tiles, of course, are made of
Asbestos.
Thank you, asbestos, and the adhesive has been compromised because it's now come into contact with water. So we shut down this classroom. We shut down the classroom because if one of these tiles is loosened because the adhesive is compromised, and children and adults are walking on it, it will put us at risk of that tile crumbling and breaking, and that is not what you want. What's the word?
Friable.
Friable. Because if it's friable, it's very bad. So this school district will do an abatement on this classroom. We would have done it right then, but if we do an abatement on it right now, we have to shut down the rest of that hallway so that they can do a full abatement. This is not asbestos tiles we have in a Hera. binder, which tells you where all the asbestos is located. It is a very, very large binder. But we do abatements all the time, and so this one will be done this summer when the children are gone. We're fortunate that there was a teacher, had a planning period, so this teacher moves around to a couple different classrooms.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
All these water leaks, is anybody doing any regular checks for mold?
I think every time they're up there, they're looking for mold anywhere. And mold, as we know from the page last year from Donahue 7 years ago, is not, it's not a far stretch from reality. Yeah, they're pulling ceiling tiles down constantly. One of the big differences, and so when I say Greg Haddon, let me explain that. Greg Haddon is our facilities director, so he knows this building inside and out. He knows not just this building, but experiences all the buildings. But one of the big differences I've learned, by the way, it's snowing outside. So one of the big differences I learned about was that we had, we're down in the boiler, we're showing these huge boilers. And he's talking about the heat that's created. He says, okay, you're putting all this heat into a classroom, why is it not staying warm? And so he asked the question, well, what insulation do we have in between in the walls? And the answer is none. There's no insulation. So we save a little bit on the envelope because there's no insulation. The places there are where you probably get a lot more mold, they just don't exist in this building, which is good from the mold standpoint, very bad from heating and cooling standpoint. So, like anything else, the building's old, you have to retrofit it for technology. Even if there was a 1950s building that was kept in great shape, you'd have to retrofit it. That makes sense. So this is what we do in the hallways to run our wiring to all of the classrooms. The other interesting part, a gentleman has said, well, hey, couldn't you just put a new HVAC system in? We said, well, you're not going to take a new HVAC system and plug it in and hook it up with all the piping to the current pipes. That would be an absolute disaster. You could, however, run it just like this through the hallways. The problem with the new HVAC is you have to pay for it. And it's $6 million, and our threshold at the high school is 3.6. We'll get to that in a little bit. But yeah, this is what our children see every day. This is what people coming in see every day. Okay, this is the middle school as well. This is one of our middle school offices, and you see the water all over the floor, ceiling tile soaked. There was a flood because there was a hole in the roof. We fixed that hole in the roof, and come back a few months later. This did not have the tarp system in the middle school, or the funnel system in the middle school, so we do it again, another flood. And this was, I put the date there because 2 Thursdays ago, from tomorrow, we were in a meeting with Brad over a new report about the building. And we received a text message, hey, just got this is forming. It's just a little sinkhole. It's not a big deal, it's coned up. What's crazy about this is about 40 feet from this one, another one had formed in the center of the parking lot, which we repaired. This is just the reality that we constantly live with. These pop up. You hope your car's not on top of it when it pops up. But we fix these. It takes a little bit of time, and someone has to come to make sure we do it correctly. So just some comparisons. The left is our auditorium right now. In the right is, I think is this Situate, you know? So this is Situate High School. We've gone to I've gone to several different high schools and elementary schools to look at what's the MSBA projects look like, because I tend to be a pessimistic person when it comes to the work that gets done, especially when it's done at a size this big. So when I go ask a lot of questions about quality assurance, how do you make sure that's put in correctly, it's done correctly? And there's a big explanation process that people talk about that they've had to undergo that MSBA also helps out with. But it is impressive to see what kind of the average standard has been in all the other buildings. And when I come back to my alma mater, it's kind of sad to see. So this room right here has been in existence for quite a while. Back in the days, it was a shop class, and then it got converted. Well, I think you can see the garage part. So it was a shop class, it was a tech class, auto tech class, and now it's our art room. And this is what an art room is supposed to look like. We have to cram everything in because we're fighting for space. If you ever go into the high school before the spring musical or the fall play, or a concert performance, every single one of the rooms, just after the cafeteria, the kids are in there using them because they're all doing their different pieces. That's the space we have. The problem with that for us, especially for me, the school, you view it as the center of the community. That's where you want all community members to go and rally. And here, we can't do that. So if there's programming, like if there's cooking classes, yoga classes, art classes that are being done by a senior center program or a community group, we don't have opportunities for great access. I know there's seniors that come and walk around high school right now because it's, well, used to when it was colder, because there's no place to do that locally. The new place is designed so anyone should be able to access it after 3:50 as long as they get permission, once the students are done. So all those community groups who wouldn't have access now would. And that includes, one of the biggest requests that we get is for the auditorium. So when people want to hold forums or people want to hold performances, we have spaces, and you'll see in a little bit, for the kids who are practicing for those plays and musicals. There's other spaces in the building, black box theater, where they can go ahead and they can do those events. Science lab. So again, these are all fixed to the ground. This is actually a physics class. I had Mr. Bodman when I was there. Also, it was great to have these walkthroughs. Some of the original teachers from 1956 were there. Some of them were in these classrooms. So I heard a lot of stories. But this classroom, there's seats for about 18 kids here, and then everything else is a lab bench. You'll notice here what I talked about before. This is the ideal state lab. Everything's around the perimeter. This is how they mandate everything gets set up in their science labs. And then everything else is on wheels. It's all movable. So those 4 classrooms that were casualties of the flood, Pentucket Ed Foundation donated a tremendous amount of fitness equipment, cardio equipment, because we have a kinesiology class and lab. So kids get on not just to exercise, but to do measurements and to understand movement. So that's, if they need to use them, that's where they go now. They were supposed to be in a classroom, but that classroom is gone. So they live in the hallway right now. And this is in Situate again, a kinesiology lab. Are these all Situate, or is there some?
No, that's Newton.
Oh, this is Newton, okay. So why can't we fix it? This goes back to what I mentioned earlier. We know the HVAC seems to be, like if I had to objectively assess it, I would say HVAC is our Achilles heel. Because the HVAC requires water to come from the outside. Those pipes rupture often. And then you are having them, you send them through the pipes, cast iron pipes in the building, and those also rupture. So that seems to be our Achilles heel. If I were to look at just that, and we looked into it, it's about a $6 million price tag to fix the HVAC, but that's just the HVAC. That doesn't include going and taking out the old pipes and the asbestos that's with it and doing all the abatements. So as soon as you go in and you hit asbestos, just like you would with mold, you're stopping, you're doing an abatement. So as soon as you start to factor those costs in, it starts creeping up anywhere from $9 to $11.5 million. We get to do 30% of the building's value. The building's assessed value right now is $12.1 million. So 3.6 is what we have at the middle school. It's right around $3 million, so we have $1 million to work with at the middle school. So that's kind of our threshold. And there are emergency situations where we can request and just do one aspect of the building, but we also know that if we go to try to treat the electrical piece, fix the electrical fixtures and the electricity in our building, we are going to run into all those other issues, which are going to require us to bring everything else up to code. So once that happens, once we go over that amount, we know from the estimates that we put on the repair only back in July, that it's about $73.2 million to repair the high school, and just over $40 million to repair the middle school. And we have a whole contingency plan. And Page and Donahue are both actually the inspiration for that. Because if something happens at any school, children don't need to be worried about where they're gonna go to school. Teachers don't need to be stressed about, I don't have a classroom. There's going to be adjustments that are made, but anytime you have a situation where a child is not comfortable where they are, because the teacher's not comfortable, that's a bad situation. So we have these contingency plans, so we know, doesn't matter which building, something happens there, we know exactly where they're going. Okay. Movie time. Does anybody have any questions? These are all videos. Does anybody have any questions? All right. One person will say something eventually.
Hey, Dr. Big.
How
Maybe this is for Brad to answer, but since the track record with flat roofs has been less than stellar, why does the new design include a flat roof?
Go ahead, I'll let Brad go. I'll preempt that with, I don't know if I, so it's not, the roof is not completely flat. It is pitched. It's pitched so that it's pitched this way, isn't it?
There's a little pitch to it, yeah. So everything slopes to drain. I mean, when you look at new buildings today, there's a couple of reasons for it. Okay, no roof is flat anymore, right? All pitches to take care of the water. So if you were looking at, across the street at a house, that's 100 years old, right? We used to pitch the roofs to get the water off. So we're doing the same thing, we're just not doing it as aggressively with that pitch, but all roofs ultimately, leak at some point, and you have to go and take care of it, but the pitch isn't what's driving it. Snow load is something that, now we've taken into account, so it's not something where we'll have a structural loading issue associated with this. That's all designed in as part of the project. And I guess lastly is if you think about it, that high school wing that we were looking at, that's almost, it's about 50 feet high. And so if you were to go and put a pitched roof onto that, right, and have it, be kind of resembling, what a pitched roof would look like in New England, you're going to be up over 70 feet. And so it becomes something that just, I think when we talked about it, just out of scale for where we are. There's not many 50-foot buildings in West Newbury, let alone 70-foot buildings in West Newbury. So we think, that when you look at it, it makes a lot of sense, and then it's significantly less expensive. Because, that all of that pitch and all of that, it's square footage of the building and it costs money.
The snow also has to slide someplace too. Which if anybody's been in Boston by the pregnant building during the wintertime
Sure.
and seen all the cones around it because some architect decided to.
Yeah, so we do pitch buildings, right? There's a time and place for it, and just in terms of the overall things that we're trying to accomplish here, we didn't think it made sense.
So that was the exterior video. This is a video again that we're showing for the first time to a big public. This is the interior. So when you see this, when you see the camera, this means this is where we're going to move. We're going to be moving from one part to the other part. So that's kind of the motion of this video right here.
Except the other way.
Great. So how do you even know that?
Yeah, so you started, it's kind of, the idea here is we actually have a video too that takes you all the way through, inside and out. But so you're walking through that front door, right on the bottom there, right above the blue.
You're right.
So you walk through that front door, and then you're going to take a right turn into that green area, which is represented as the dining commons. So.
And I'll also just say this. When you see this, this is not something I can make on my computer. I can't just go put these videos together. And it turns out that one of these videos takes about 29 hours. So the program puts in all the information what we have for the building. And it takes them 29 hours to run the simulation to get
just to render it, not to make it.
Right, sorry, not yet, way more time to make it. So you don't make a mistake. You don't start like, oh yeah, I forgot to add in a chair, because that's going to delay you another 29 hours.
We made lots of mistakes, so we had to run it a lot of times.
So here we go. You recognize that music from the same level.
All the guys have baseball count. The program sets their count afterwards.
Not all of them, but a lot of them.
So dining, and it goes into a few different spaces here. But dining's available downstairs, it's available upstairs, you have quiet spaces, but everything's visible. And that's what we also noticed in all of our visits to the other schools. The students might be in little areas working together, but there's windows are right there, easily supervised. Here we go inside that auditorium. This does a great job of representing what ours is, a rendition of our project. So if you need to take an elevator up, this puts everyone right there at the stage.
seating capacity?
I think it's about, is it 100 some odd more than what we have now?
Yeah, it's around 600.
600?
600.
About 600.
So again, this is another place for students to eat. And that room on the right-hand side, there's an elevator on the right-hand side, but the room behind it, that's just a quiet space. Someone, if it's during lunch, they want to eat there, they can do that. If it's not during lunch, it can be used for students, for testing purposes or whatever they may be. Yeah.
These kids really look like they're studying, they're really neat.
Yeah.
Everybody's reading a book.
Someone, I think someone I saw 213 area code, I'm not sure.
Library?
Yeah, so this is the library, media, library area, again, used for all sorts of different things. The bookshelves here, like, we haven't picked out all the furniture, but the new buildings I've been in, all those bookshelves are movable in case you want to have an event up in the library. You can shift things around with the needs. And that's a flexible space is a huge theme with the state and this building. Because again, we don't know 10, 15 years from now how things change. There it is, 210 area code.
Will the whole building have Wi-Fi?
Yeah, oh yeah. Yep. I mean, we technically have it now, although students tell me it drops all the time.
I never get it on my Wi-Fi.
Well, and our tech folks say, look, we're dealing with concrete walls and we have access points, but yeah, it should be something we're able to, because we anticipate the public using the building so much, we partition off bandwidth, so there's a public section for Wi-Fi as well. So that's the inside of the building. And I've got one more. And this one to me is kind of my favorite one because there's no music, which I had to listen to over. But also it just plays out the whole timeline of here's where we are now. And then it shows the progress of how this building would play out from tearing down buildings to building the new building. It's a pretty neat video. And look, I mean, they put up the fencing, and this pauses in different places to label so you can see it. I'll talk through some of it. So this is what currently exists. That's the old high school, current middle school. It's a new single. So again, that was the house that was there, and that becomes all temporary parking. And I'm told that it's the same amount of parking we have right now, which for student drivers is miraculous. So, there they are, they're working on them. Pay attention. These are where our current boilers are, right in here. You'll see that is the one part of the building that gets disturbed. We have to put up an external heating source.
Just heat now at the school, steam heat?
Yes. And you see, there's the temporary boiler plant. We are fortunate, I didn't mention this, but we shifted off of oil to natural gas And that's really helped the longevity of those tubes. So if you ever have to drive and drop off your children or get stuck behind buses, this is a massive alleviation of all of that. 113 shouldn't be crowded in the mornings when you're trying to get by there at 7:15 to 7:30. There's plenty of what we call a queue line for people to go. Okay, now we're doing demo.
At this time, all the kids are in the new high school
So
and the middle school.
everyone's in the 7 to 12 building. And because of the hazardous materials, we actually have to pay a premium, a couple $1 million in premium for proper disposal of all that hazardous waste. That's kind of the site plan. Another piece, if you didn't know this, the current high school was a 7 to 12. The 7th and 8th grade were the left hand, so if you're facing the building, they were the right hand side, the top floor, the bottom floor, and the high school was on the other side. And when it started to get crowded, they went ahead and they did doubles. They did a morning session and they did an afternoon session. And as one of Mr. Purcelli told me, yep, I used to come in and I would teach in the morning, teach my classes in the morning as a science teacher, teach his class in the morning, and then in the afternoon he'd come in and sub. And there's a way for him to make extra money. So we talked about that. So the total cost, and I'm going to let Joe and Angus, Mr. Kemper, Mr. Archibald, Dr. Archibald want to talk about it. Again, overall cost is $146.3. So the state, in this instance, because we're partnering with the state, they will pay just over $53 million, and we will know the exact amount tomorrow. Wait, no, Thursday night. Thursday night, you'll get the exact amount. So for you, what does that mean for you? Here's how it plays out, and there's assumptions based on it here, and that's going to be on the next slide. Groveland, Merrimack, and West Newbury. So for West Newbury, it's $755, somewhere thereabouts. And I'm going to turn this over now. Angus, if you want.
Sure, yeah, I can speak to this. The selectmen were really the architect of this school funding stabilization model. So I'll summarize it and they can fill in the blanks if I miss anything. But in a nutshell, the town is really a combination, in my observation, of both good planning and good fortune. Over the course of the prior roughly 4 or 5 years and the next, between now and fiscal 23, so the next roughly 3 years, the town, just by luck or good fortune, has paid off or is paying off all of the prior debt. So 4 or 5 years ago, the selectmen said, rather than as that expiring debt comes off the tax rolls, rather than the policy was essentially to continue to raise that money from the taxpayer, to put it into school stabilization, knowing that this project was coming down the road, so that when the time comes, there would be an amount of money already sitting there to try to take the edge off. So that's been the policy for the last, about 5 years. And there's another proposed article in the coming town meeting with warrant to put another $321,000 into stabilization. So there's an amount of money sitting there that helps to contribute toward the school costs. But the bigger piece of the model is going forward, that roughly $684,000 that the town had been raising and appropriating for debt service for, call it 2 decades, is already embedded in the tax rate. So the town, going forward, if the project passes, would continue to raise and appropriate that amount. That's $684,000 a year. So that is still being paid by the taxpayer, but it's embedded in the tax rate, so it's not an incremental cost. So of the roughly $755 annual cost estimated for the median value of home in the town of West Newbury, about $455 of that is a combination of already embedded in the tax rate as well as coming out of this stabilization fund that's been capitalized over the last several years. So the incremental cost, meaning over and above today's tax bill, is about $300. So just to walk you through the assumptions, because they're very important. So this is based on the, it says average, it's actually median value home of $569,000. This does rely on town meeting continuing to contribute that retiring debt over the life of the project. So in each tax year, the taxpayer is paying that money. The point is it's already built into the tax rate. This does not include projection of future non-school debt, which makes it very important that our capital improvement committee and our capital planning documents account for all of those non-school capital needs. So this year in the proposed town meeting warrant is a proposal to put $500,000 into capital stabilization, which, looking ahead, that $500,000, if the town continues to appropriate that, is estimated to cover the non-school capital needs. So that's not to say over the 30-year life of the project, there's not going to be new capital needs that come over and above that. That's bound to happen, but in terms of what's on the table now and what's projected, the goal is to absorb as many of those non-school capital needs as possible out of that capital stabilization. And so this is based on the project cost and the district share, as Dr. B summarized. These numbers will all be updated at the end of this week, once we have the actual cost share from the SBA.
So for town meeting, we'll have the actual number.
That's right. Yeah, we'll post that probably by this weekend.
Gonna be working hard on Friday.
Well, the model's built. You
Works hard every day.
I know.
You just change a couple of numbers, it'll run all through the model. We built it knowing we would have to update it quickly, so it's all kind of interconnected.
Another good thing is it's possible that interest rates could actually go down in the next 6 months. And that would,
That's a plus.
even 0.5% or something.
It's huge.
Makes a huge difference. So over a course of several $1 million project over 30 years, it's huge. So
Yeah, you've
cross
heard
your
me.
fingers on that. That could help us.
Yeah, I mean, we have a 30-year bond with 2.75. That's a non-callable rate, and that 2.75 at that time when we got that was a conservative, because they were at 2.25. Most bond rates have gone up, so there's higher now. We don't know where exactly they are, but now you can start to look at callable and say, okay, apparently some callable bonds are going ahead and they're giving premiums. It gets a little bit complicated, but they essentially give you millions, sometimes millions of dollars to accept a callable rate at like 3. For us, from the school's perspective, we take the approach of whatever is going to be the cheapest over the long term. That is the product we're going with. We don't control, we put things out to bid, and we just have to see who comes back with the bids. I saw hands. Go here first and here second. Go ahead. You got it.
Good.
Yes.
Just so I'm clear, out of the $755 total, we are already paying $455.
That's right.
So the increase, if the stabilization keeps going, will be an additional $300.
That's right.
Build it.
That's right. Yeah, now you're, just to you're continuing to pay the $455, but the idea is that you won't feel it any more than you feel paying your tax bill already, which
So
It actually is $755, but it would have gone down $455 if we hadn't done that.
Right.
So in algebraic terms, we're currently paying X. In this model, you're saying when the building's paid for, maybe we'll be paying X plus 300.
Correct.
That's right.
The other two towns, I understand that West Newbury has created this pool of $455 stabilization. Did the other two towns also do the same?
No, they don't.
Not that we know.
They have, but I also don't know all the things that they've had in debt exclusion that might be coming off of their books. I know Merrimack, when Chief Shears, he has a police station that they were building. They were looking at what the cost of that would be and how that played out. And there was talk that there were some things coming off of their books in the near future. Sorry.
We're not paying any less, we're just been saving.
That was my exact question.
Okay.
That was your question.
Go ahead.
About what?
So this is all the capital costs, right? Has there been an evaluation of O&M costs going forward so that we have a good maintenance program so that we don't lose?
Wonderful question. Great question. And thank you very much for asking it, because one of the questions we get constantly is, listen, this building that's now 63 years old, why is it not going to 163? There should have been some upkeep. And to that I say, yes, I agree. I sometimes use this example of a 56 Chevy. If I had a 56 Chevy and I drove it every single day, again, here's the car salesman thing, right? But if I drove that every single day for 63 years, 17 hours a day, I would have to do some upkeep on it. And the amount of upkeep we did on our 56 was superficial. We didn't get down into the bone. Here, and this is why I think we're
But
optimistic.
there were reasons for that.
Sure.
It wasn't because we're neglecting it.
No.
There were hard decisions to make during budgeting time, and it was that we were in on those. And we were not in on those, but we were part of them and saying, hey, are we going to lay off 2 teachers? Or are we going to even decrease our foreign language even more? Where can we kind of just grab a little bit of money so we can keep another teacher in the classroom for our kids? That was the thought mentality. There was never a thought mentality of, hey, and that was all trying to keep taxes low and trying to make a budget pass in all 3 towns. There was never anybody that I've ever encountered that said, we're just not putting money into it.
That's not what I'm suggesting.
So
I know, but you know how that sometimes that's implied when people say that we've deferred maintenance. There was
I
a
just
reason
want to
why.
be sure if we have this brand new beautiful building that there's going to be a budget to take care of it.
So the state actually
No, that's a good
requires,
question.
the state requires us to have a facilities plan. And based on the facilities plan, you either get 0 additional points, or you can get up to, is it up to 2 points?
Yeah, so that's historical, right? And it adds to your, basically your reimbursement rate. Wendy, where I think you're trying to get to is ultimately, as you know, right? When we're taking an old building and we're comparing that to a new building, they're very different buildings, right? So one of the things with a new building is you don't have enough electrical outlets, you don't have, the lighting, you don't have the computers, all of those things, which actually comparatively drive some consumption levels up. But what we're doing here, right, is we're doing a lot of things, and this is going to be a sustainable building as well, is, we're going to be insulating the building, so we're going to make the building significantly more efficient, right, in terms of how it's put together to offset some of those things that would typically drive, new building operational costs up. Not talking about educational teaching or anything like that right now. And then I think that, the other thing that we just need to think about too is we're taking 2 buildings here and combining them into 1. And so when you look at just the amount of square footage that we have to go and heat and theoretically, if we could, right, cool that building, we're going to be running somewhere around 40 to 50,000 square feet less that we're going to have to operate and maintain. So ultimately, we do have to file, okay, with the state, proactively moving forward, okay, as part of this project, what our operations and maintenance costs are going to be as a projection for that based on the design when we get that complete. So, but our expectation is that the building should be overall a little less to operate, right, in terms of ongoing year to year, and it should be significantly more efficient.
But will we know that before we vote on this?
You won't have that in finality.
Because that will impact our tax bill from a different point.
From an operational perspective, right? But the expectation is that it will be less.
Be less than what we're paying now.
I can't give you the hard answer because we haven't designed it yet.
Yeah, we actually had a question that came to me. There's one of the two people on tour. One was an architect, and one used to work for MSBA. I was interning with MSBA, and they moved into West Newbury recently, and they were asking me that exact same question. And I kind of gave this blank stare of, I don't know that we actually run all those numbers because we don't know the exact systems that we put in to calculate that.
But at some point, you've got to consider what the extraordinary costs have been for the last several years. I mean, you know, you somehow have to plug that into your O&M costs, and you know, so you've been fighting fires, you know, trying to deal with major failures on an ongoing basis for the last decade, and maybe that wasn't, you know, originally planned as part of the O&M budget, but somewhere it came out of the school budget. You know, I don't know what dance you had to do to compensate for it. Obviously, somewhere
A lot of
that money, that money had to come from somewhere.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah, and I mean, just to that point, I know the last 6 years, 10 years ago, that maintenance was massively underfunded. And just within the last 6 years, we've focused on it because we've known you can't just do it with a Band-Aid, we get a significant bandage. So we're paying more money just to keep things going.
that is true. Dick Cushing, I remember this when we were doing the budget, Dick Cushing was on as a selectman, and we noticed that most of the maintenance was turning into capital projects, and then the town, because of the regional agreement, and the town's responsible for it. And so we were trying to put more maintenance in the maintenance thing. So these small maintenance items, or minimum maintenance items, would turn into capital items. And so they did make a big concerted effort to put more money into maintenance, and they've been doing it religiously for the last 10 years.
Yeah, quick question related to the building itself and maintenance. I know that with like the 95 edition, when I was on the school committee, because they wanted to save money, they used sheetrock instead of cinder block for walls. And of course, with hundreds of kids in a building over days and days and days, sheetrock isn't as durable as cinder block. What type of materials are you using for floors, walls, things of that nature that will help maintain the durability of the building?
Yeah, before Brad gets to answering that question, one of the things I'll mention is that the building in its entirety, we want to make sure a few things. One, it's cost effective, it's needed, it's sustainable, and it's easy, the maintenance of it is very simple. Those are very key things. So we've gone around and looked at all different schools from flooring. So there's some flooring where sound, it's a different environment. Because sound, if cinder blocks, everything sound bounces off. You use a different material, it absorbs the sound. So the 95 edition, those rooms are much quieter than the original building. But in this entire project, those are overall our goals and all the materials we're looking to utilize. And I have no idea, Brad. So I know polished concrete is the bottom floor. I know that for certain.
Yeah, so I mean, we're doing it with an eye towards, right, the fact that you're going to have 900 plus kids that are going to be running through this building for the next 50 plus years, right? So particularly in high traffic, high use areas, we're using very durable materials. Exterior, we're using brick or masonry type products, right? We cook dirt, we make bricks last forever. So we're spending a lot of time with Greg Hatton, who has a vested interest in making sure that the project can be maintained. We are looking at it with a sustainable buy. It is going to be a lead project. So we really are spending a fair amount of time focusing on materials. There's a vast, wide array of different materials that we're going to be using. But we have to look at those things too in terms of cost effectiveness. Do you need to go and run durability up if you have an 18-foot high, floor to ceiling height? Do we need to run tile up all the way? No, we don't. We can go drywall up higher, but we want to hit, that first 4 or 5 feet. So where it's going to get abused, that maybe that's tile or some other type of wainscots that we can go and, improve the durability.
Yes.
The existing schools are all heat only, correct? Primarily.
That's correct, yeah.
The new building is going to be forced air, heat and air conditioning?
Well, it'll be, it'll be forced hot water in some areas, right?
Forced hot water baseboard?
Yeah, so it depends. In some areas it'll be forced hot water where we've got, a lot of glass or something, so we'll have some radiant there, but otherwise, yeah, we'll be pushing air.
Okay, so that, adding the air conditioning, which is really, in this day and age, is necessary, but it does add on to the operating costs.
You have no idea of this conversation. This went on for days and days.
I'm sure it did.
So we did. We had a really good discussion about whether or not we should do that. Whether or not this building should be fully air conditioned or whether we should look at, some other type of method. And ultimately it was a decision that, we should air condition the building, looking forward. At the same time, we've spent a great deal of time with our mechanical engineers trying to come up with what we think is a very efficient system. Right, and looking at that in conjunction with how we're dealing with the building envelope, we think that we've got a pretty good system that ultimately we expect to be about somewhere at 30 plus or minus % more efficient than the current building code. So West Newbury, right, is a stretch code community, right, which means that you need to be 20% better. So we're thinking about trying to go and make this 30% better, based on the materials that we're using and the type of design we're using. So the HVAC system will be efficient, it will be fully air conditioned, and we pay a lot of attention not to just is it hot or is it cold, but to the thermal comfort and how we lay that out, because ultimately it's important for the occupants that we use.
And one of the issues that I had to come around to was, you have to step outside of what we know. We know right now, we go to school after Labor Day, or right around Labor Day to the middle of June, essentially, but we never think about the summer. 5 years from now, if we have kids going to school in summertime now, but just small groups. But if that increases 5 years, 10 years from now, we're going to want to retrofit with a whole new air conditioning. I think that ends up being more costly. Now we're coming back to the table. So putting it in now, and if we don't use it that much, great. If we do use it because students are there in the summer, it gives us more flexibility, and even more importantly, again, if we want the schools to be the focal point of the community, you want community access in the summertime, you need a cool place to do those events. Now we've got that place.
Just to follow up quickly, I know that there's a lot of glass, which is great. Can I assume that the orientation of the buildings is being looked at to minimize solar gain, and/or they're putting in systems on the initial construction to manage that solar gain?
Yes, absolutely.
That was actually some of the cool software. Again, never had to go to an architect before. I've hopped in on projects where I've been working with the construction manager, but that was post-architect. They have the software that shows exactly where the sun rises, sun sets, and that's how they've always positioned shade curtains or whatever it might be based on the sun. It's pretty neat.
If you looked at that dining columns, when you kind of come into the front of the building, you'll see on that big piece of curtain wall there, we actually do have, a bunch of things that's reached this light to go in. And even though that's more of a southern exposure so that we can go and get some solar gain in there, we're also dealing with the glare and how that works in those types of spaces. So, we balance that off, and we go and we do a lot of work in terms of tuning the glass and the glazing for each exposure.
Okay, good, thanks.
So we got Aaron first, then Rory, sorry.
Sorry, Mom.
Oh, boy, I know, mother and
I just want to say I applaud you for doing the AC. If anyone has ever been on the third floor or second floor of a Page School in September, May, or June, the last 2 years, I think we counted over 20 days of the school year where the temperature in the classrooms was over 80 if there weren't individual air conditioning units, and that significantly impacts learning for students. So I know it's an extra investment, but I think it's really beneficial.
And we saw at the start of this year where schools that started in August, that first week in August, some schools canceled because
I think with climate changes that we're seeing, I think that it's just the smart investment. So.
My turn?
yes, had I known, I would have given you the floor.
I take it. You had talked earlier about the pitch of the roof.
Yeah.
Okay, and I applaud the fact that New England is finally getting on board with that. However, I do have to ask you, how many schools have you actually used this with, this design with? And what's been the outcome?
So we've never used this design, right? Because every design that we do is different. But with respect to just having what we'll call for now a flat roof, right? We use them pretty much everywhere in some way, shape, or form. There's some elements that may be pitched, but predominantly driven by cost. You'll see most school buildings will be, unless they're maybe single stories, single level or something like that. You're going to go and see them where they're going to be flat with that pitch that I talked about to deal with drainage. So, in Massachusetts over the past 20 years, I don't know, we've probably done, maybe 15 or 20 school buildings, and 90% of those are flat roofs.
Okay, thank you.
Are they all standing?
So far, yeah, everything's still up there.
Because I know there was a couple of blizzards a couple of years ago.
Yeah, and the code has changed, right? So I mean, I remember before, when we had that big snow, I forget how many years ago it was now. I mean, Greg actually had called us up and we hooked him up with a structural engineer, actually the same structural engineer that's doing this, to go and talk to him about whether or not the building and the current design that we had at the high school was going to work. And it still was, but even since then, and since the code has changed, right, the code has gotten a lot more strict in terms of the loading requirements and what the building has to be designed for to accommodate that. So, and there's margins built in on that too.
Yes, sir.
Just a thought and maybe a question. My experience in the Cape Henley, it appears to me that Pentucket is the oldest current school in the Cape Henley. I know that Newburyport did it, Hamilton Wenham did it, Ipswich, etc. Amesbury, yeah, you're right. And then outside of it, Triton has done it. Is that a fact? Is it the oldest?
As in, has not been renovated
Right,
or repaired.
right.
In the Cape Ann League, all the teams you just mentioned, yes, that is.
Masconomet.
Masco, Amesbury, Triton,
Yeah.
Newburyport.
Yeah.
Yes, that's true.
So I think Pentucket deserves a lot of credit for lasting as long as it has.
Sure, and I think the folks who came, and when you look at the document, I mentioned this several times, for the 1952 document, the West Newbury and Groveland are petitioning their towns to regionalize so that they can build a building because they know they need something for the future. It's a pretty neat document. And 2 years later, Merrimack will join in that, and they form this building that's lasted us 63 years. It's a pretty neat historical document just to see all of them working together. And it's not much different than what we're trying to do right now, is bring everybody together to just lay out, we need this. And I know at Merrimack, when I talked to the folks who went to school at Pentucket Open, we actually talked to one woman who, she had played basketball, and she graduated in 1954 from Merrimack High School. And it was the top of the town hall, it was their basketball court, she didn't have a court. Their building, I understand, was in such bad shape that they knew they didn't have any other options than to draw. So it's just a pretty neat historical piece.
I think the last high school we had was the one on Pleasant, Marshall Drive, at the end of Marshall Drive, where, if anybody knows where I live on Merrill Street, so if you know where Naps is, Marshall Drive is kind of like kitty corner from Merrill Street. That was our last high school that was condemned, who knows when. I think, and then John McGrath, who's 80-something, had to go to Newburyport.
So, yes, ma'am.
May I have 3 minutes?
Ms. Swallow, can I ask, can I do this one last piece and then turn it over to you?
Absolutely.
So these are the estimates that Angus had gone over. So right now, the district share looks to be about $93.2 million. And again, these are all the pieces that dictate what gets paid. And then this part, and I'm gonna stand up for this part. You can read this, but this is pretty easy to understand just from a common sense value. So if this goes through all towns on both sets of votes, at town meeting and at the ballot, people's taxes are going to go up. People are gonna have to pay for that. If there's a no in any one of those 6, I will be coming back to each town to request a feasibility study be done to repair the high school immediately. That feasibility study will cost us about $1.5 million, which is going to come out of taxpayers' pockets just to do the study. And we'll go over the same exact process again, where we'll have 6 boats to try to get the repair, because that's another override. And then as soon as that gets approved, I'm gonna come right back and say, now we need to do the same thing for the middle school. I need another $1.5 million to do a feasibility for the middle school. And we'll do the same thing, 6 boats. So the cost of those 2 projects is over $110 million. The cost of this project is 93. Difference being, you're getting a modern school that meets the needs of the way education is delivered now, and will take care of the way education is delivered 25 years from now. We can't say the same about if we pay more money and just repair. So there's a third option. So you can say no to the first one. You can say no to the repairs. And now we're riding out the building until we can't anymore. And we can't because the heating goes, the electrical goes, and then we're out. And that building is left there, and we move over into the middle school. The high school moves to the middle school. In the middle school, they come down. There's all the West Newbury students, 7th and 8th grade goes to Page, 7th and 8th grade goes to Merrimack, 7th and 8th grade goes to Bagnell. Page can handle that, Merrimack can handle that, Groveland will struggle with that. Now you drive down 113 and you will have an abandoned high school and a middle school, which is now functioning as a high school. So however you feel about that, just keep that in the back of your mind. I know growing up in this community, I was not taught to kick the can. I was taught to see a problem, address a problem, and resolve the issue to the best of my ability. I don't know if I'm a student, I know we talk to people who have come. In fact, I was in a house in West Newbury, there were 65 people, children and adults. I didn't know any of them that grew up around here. So they've all moved here. So you get asked the question, why did you come here? Schools, community. Schools are a reflection of the community. They recognize this, they know the product we're creating, that's why they show up. So when that school piece is gone, we're still going to be working hard, teachers are going to be working hard, we're going to produce a quality product. But it will be in even less ideal circumstances than what we have now. So those are the 3 options. If this goes 6 yeses, everyone who's in favor of this can rejoice. I will continue to stress, because I've been inside the vault in the high school, and I know how vulnerable that is. It has to last 3 more years. My money is that it does not make it 3 more years. Something will happen and we will go to contingency. That's the reality of the situation. And if you've ever taken a tour or walked through, you would understand why I feel that way. If there's one single no and then we go to the no on the repairs, that's, again, it's up to the towns. That's up to the towns. But I think it's just something to always just think about. It's amazing. I have 3 kids, 8th grade, 6th grade, and 2nd grade. Now, if this all plays out and it passes, my 8th grader will have senior year in the building, but will never have participated on a field, a Pentucket field, never. My 6th grader, possibly, all depends. My 2nd grader will, but that's a 2nd grader. So when you listen to the children in high school and middle school talk about this project, and I had a student who's in videography was saying that as soon as we released that first video, the exterior, we released that, they were all over Instagram, Snap, and what other Facegram things that they do. They were all over it, and there were comments about, oh my God, this is awesome, why can't we have this now? I mean, they absolutely loved it. And a big reason why was because, I said earlier, we went to the consumers. We went to the children and said, listen, tell us about your habits. Tell us about what your needs are. When you're in a room like this, what do you wish you had? And then you talk to the teachers. So you built this design based on the feedback of all the people who are going to be using it. So it's a big number. If we wait, took 7 years to be approved to building, it's at least 7 more years if we were able to get it with the MSBA next year. If this did not pass, we will not. I won't even bother applying to the MSBA if this fails, because they already know we've had 20 years to think about this. If after 20 years we come back and say no again, we're going to be in line for many years. So we're going to be faced with, we either do this on our own, pay this out of our own pocket, or whatever happens to those buildings, happens to those buildings. This idea that Newburyport will just accept our students, they can't take 750 kids. No school in the Cape Ann League can do that. So it's our problem. We can kick it down the road or we can address it.
And we've spent $1 million so far as a district to get to this point. And the MSBA doesn't appreciate, they've spent a lot of capital themselves and a lot of manpower. They don't like it when they get this far and then it's voted down. And then they said, we should have spent all this time and all this stuff on other towns. And that's when you get to the bottom of the list again. And it could be 7 to 10 years before you can get to this point again. And another million, so you figure in 7 to 10 years, that 1 million is probably going to be 2 million to get to this point.
So I think, and that's absolutely a good point. The MSBA is not just a sound part. They're actively involved. They're paying people to oversee this entire process. But they are going to be very hesitant to enter an agreement with us again. But again, that's our decision.
They're very happy and they're very helpful to this point because we've been very good and we've put up the money and we've been good to this point, but they're not going to waste, I don't mean to seem so crass, but they're not going to waste their time then if you can't fund it. They want to go to other towns that will fund it.
And I believe, so if there was some emergency that needs repair, they've been asking for, what would you come and help? They said, look, you have to take care of your problem. Go ahead and take care of your problem. If we can help out in any way, we'll see what we can do. But I know there's other communities, municipalities, that have not passed a vote, realized, oops, because something happened to their building, they went back to the MSBA and they received a letter that said, no, you're on your own. So just always things to keep in mind. Anybody have any other questions? Yes.
I would just like to say that it's an exciting project.
Yeah.
And I would also just like to compliment that there's been so much information on the web, being able to see some of the videos online and to really begin to understand the project. And, I've been really appreciative of that. So thank you for all your work in the committee on this.
Yeah, we really appreciate that because I know, again, when I was teaching here back in the late 90s when this came up, and even as a teacher, you do a little bit about it, but not too much. So you don't repeat the same mistakes. You want to make sure that everyone understands the factual information of what's going on and what the implications are. And it also helps us. We get ideas about what people are thinking, and hopefully we've thought of most of it, but there's no way we've thought of all of it. And the different perspectives are really helpful.
There's been a great cross-section of people that came out, from the kids to the older people to parents that have kids in high school and grade school, give their suggestions. It's actually been a great process.
So, and I'm assuming at town meeting there will be information again for people who haven't been involved, just saying, here are your options.
Speaking of that, there's only one person who can really fill us in on all the details, so I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Swallows.
Town moderator.
I'm glad you asked that question.
Yeah.
I'm
looking for a link to get up here and
I'm
talk.
actually looking for your help. I'm Casey Swallow. I'm the moderator of West Newbury, and I will be moderating the town meeting. And it has come to my attention that there is quite a bit of misunderstanding and misinformation about what town meeting is, what's going to happen at town meeting, why do we need 2 votes, and it bothers me. So I beg your indulgence. I'm going to explain the process of what's going to happen with the votes, and I'm going to start with town meeting. Town meeting may sound like a sort of a silly name, but it's not. It is a form of government, most often used in New England, but it is a form of town government. And town meeting, when we get together and have the meeting, is the legislative branch of the government. It's not a debating society. It's not a place to get information. That's why we're having these kinds of meetings now, so that you can get all of the information that you need. Town meeting is the legislative branch of the government, and so when the motions are made to appropriate money for such things, we are actually providing the funds that allow our town to function. If we don't appropriate money, the town can't do what they need to do. So we go to town meeting, we appropriate the money that runs the town for an entire year. In 1980, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, following some initiatives in California actually, passed what's called Proposition 2.5. Proposition 2.5 is a law that limits the amount that our taxes can be raised to 2.5% of the previous year's levy plus any growth in the town. And it was a way to keep the tax bill from just escalating and escalating and escalating. So we're limited to increasing our taxes by 2.5% over the previous year's levy limit. Now, when we have a situation like we have here where we need to appropriate a large amount of money, we can't afford to do that within the 2.5% levy limit. And so what we do is we appropriate the money at town meeting, because that's where money gets appropriated. And then we have to go to the polls to approve having that borrowing amount not be part of the levy limit. It's a debt exclusion. So we can increase our taxes by 2.5% for all of the other things that we fund for the town. And then over and above that, we'll have this increase in taxes specifically for this project. It's important that everyone understand, and not just the people in West Newbury, but the people in the other towns too, that the town meeting part of this is crucial. If town meeting doesn't pass the appropriation, the vote at the ballot is pointless, because there won't be anything to have a levy limit about. So I've heard and read people saying, why do we have to go to town meeting? Why don't we just go to the ballot? Vote. There was also some misinformation in the social media saying that town meeting is going to vote to put it on the ballot. Town meeting isn't going to vote to put it on the ballot. If it doesn't pass a town meeting, the ballot is pointless. And that's true in all three towns. And so I'll tell you a little anecdote, which is why I'm scared and why I asked to be here. I was having my hair cut, and my hairdresser was in Merrimack, and there were other people in the salon, and the subject of the school project came up, and we was talking about it. And my hairdresser said, oh, that's so important. We really need this new school. It will really affect our property values either way, if we do or do not do this school. And I said, well, you're going to want to make sure you go to town meeting. And she said, what's that? And I thought, uh-oh. So I asked if I could please spend a few minutes and encourage everyone to understand that, no, we don't really have information sessions at town meeting. We have a discussion and we have a vote, but something like this can't happen in town meeting. There's not enough time to do all of this prior to having the vote. So I hope people are getting themselves informed before.
Casey, at town meeting, it's going to be a 2/3 vote, correct?
No,
it's a simple majority.
Simple majority.
We found that out a month and a half ago from DLS, from the state. It only needs to be a simple majority.
Okay, thank you.
Huh? We had to vote 2/3, the selectmen to put it on.
Can there be a text message, if people are signed up for that would just sort of explain how important this town meeting is, that you need to come and be part of it?
Well, I'm trying.
That was just one.
We've done every single thing we possibly
I'm
can
walking
do.
text messages.
What about just using our reverse 911 system?
Emergency that would be.
Well,
That's a good thought.
there are
We
notifications
can't
on
use
the town
town
website.
funds to politically advertise to vote one way or another. We can inform you.
I'm not talking about the.
I know, we can inform, I'm not saying you are, I'm just saying we can inform you that there is a town meeting, which we do in every way. We even have people going door to door in certain organizations, telling people to get out and do that. we have it in the newspaper, we have it on our signs, we tell people, we have it on our website, we have it on our Facebook page, the town stuff. We can do that and tell people there's gonna be a town meeting. We're gonna put up, we have signs that we put up around town, starting, Monday, after the Monday before, that we have a slew of signs, town meetings on Monday. We try to do it, we've done more about this than everything. There's some self-responsibility too. You'll have people at town meeting going, I don't know anything about this, how come I wasn't informed of when we built a new high school? And so disheartening, because we've been in meetings for years. For years on this, all of us taking time, trying to educate people. So we're gonna do the best we possibly can.
I think though everybody can educate, right? Everybody that's here at this meeting, everybody that goes to any other meeting, there's, I live in town too, it's a whole bunch of word of mouth that really, did you know?
Like Casey, there was a great thing about the hairdressers. I've done that in multiple places, when we're at parties and or at gatherings or at kids' events. The ball field.
People think town meeting is for somebody else, that it's.
And a lot of people think it's a discussion group, an information session. It's the legislative branch of the government.
And it depends on where you come from too. Like in Burlington, you have town meeting, but you have elected town meeting members. So when I was in Burlington, I was an elected town meeting member, and I represented my neighborhood. So not like here where everybody can go. We could have you have to be a registered voter to go, right? But so some people, if they come from another town, it was something they never did because somebody did it for them. They never really understood the process. Their roads were clean, their kids got a good education, and they had nothing to complain about. But everybody's eligible to go as long as you're a registered voter. We have 40 something. Yeah, we have close to 3,400 registered voters. And we're having it at the high school auditorium.
How long does this, the
3 hours.
About 3 hours if you're, because I used to live in Wilmington, and that got to be 2 nights, and even that was pushing it.
Well, it all depends on how we go. We could all finish it in 15 minutes if you really wanted to, but I doubt that. Because you watch, you never know. Things happen, like you spend $2 million, and it takes 3 minutes, and we talk about $2,000 from an old bill that hadn't been paid by accident for an hour and a half. So it's all up to Casey Swallow trying to keep comments at a minimum.
Do we know where this one's coming up on the warrant?
Number 9. I'm almost bottom.
But don't leave.
Number 9 on the annual stuff.
That was my question. Because inevitably, if you have it up too early, then everybody leaves, and if the town meeting isn't completed, then it's not binding until you finish your town meeting.
The town meeting,
And you can reconsider that vote.
In recent years, we have been finishing the town meeting one night. But in this particular case, I think we're going to have a lot of people who have never been to town meeting before, who probably won't understand what's going on. So I wouldn't be surprised if it didn't go an extra night. It's not my plan to do that, but
How many articles out?
A lot.
29 on the annual, and how many 9 on this?
Yeah, it's only 29 on the annual, but there's a couple of them a couple of zoning amendments, a couple of them I think are going to fly. But the most important thing, one of the more important things too, it starts at 7 o'clock. I always hear this in kind of a funny thing that West Newbury Times always seems to be 10 or 15 minutes later than you tell somebody to be at your house. So it starts at 7 o'clock. You have to get checked in and stuff. So I would say you need to be down at the high school at 6:30 to be able to get in your seat for so please just don't show up at 7 o'clock. You show up at 6:30 so you can go through the line. You have to get checked off. You have to get in your seat. There might be some materials you might want to look at. There might be boards, stuff, right?
yeah. The other thing I'll mention is we have had for many years now 2 town meetings on the same night. So we have a special town meeting and then we have the annual town meeting. So the way that works, we open the annual town meeting first, and the first couple of articles involve taking reports from town officers and committees. And so there are some people who give reports, and we have the Citizen of the Year, and we have a couple of things like that. And then we recess that town meeting and open the special town meeting. Now, the special town meeting occurs because if we make an appropriation at the annual town meeting, it's not available until the beginning of the fiscal year for which we appropriated it. So the next fiscal year is fiscal year 2020. And so those funds won't be available until July 1st, 2020. 2019. But it is fiscal year 2020. It crosses over the year. But the special town meeting, the funds that are appropriated are available immediately because they're funds that are in the current year's budget. And so when we have unusual expenses, like the one that always comes up is snow and ice removal. And so there are bills that need to be paid right now because we ran out of money in our snow and ice budget. So that kind of thing goes on a special town meeting where the funds are available immediately. Those are usually pretty non-controversial kinds of things, paying bills and stuff like that. So this special town meeting usually goes pretty fast. And then after the special town meeting is finished and we adjourn it, then we go back and pick up the annual town meeting. So in the beginning, we'll have introductions, stuff like that, and then we'll have a recess, special town meeting.
We're hoping to finish in one night, but it seems like, I was hoping, but if she says it might go 2 nights, then we're probably gonna have to organize ourselves, because we're gonna have it at the high school, to maybe pick another night before we even go in there, just make sure you're available, we're all available, the high school's available. But the key is, I think Scott has a good point, that we all have to have good faith. The whole thing about a joke, it's not really a joke, it's kind of reality. After the school things are voted, everybody leaves. And then hopefully everybody will stay. Because we listen to the school people and we said, please don't, and we used to make the school articles at the end. So we get everybody to stay for the whole night. Because we have to vote on everything so we can get a budget so we can go home. So I'm hoping everybody will stay. We listened to the school people and we said, don't, and they said, please, a lot of us that have kids in the school want to make it, please don't make it too late. But I hope they stay so
now there's the other option too, if they don't like the way the vote went, on the second night they can go back in and recall it.
Yeah.
It's not recall, it's called reconsider.
Yes, you reconsider the vote.
Now, the moderator is the parliamentarian of town meeting, so it's up to me to run the meeting. And so at least for that night, I make the rules. Reconsideration is a very tricky thing. It's not just a straightforward, it can be used as a parliamentary ploy, and you have to be very careful that when you have a motion to reconsider that it's fair. And the thing that everybody would be worried about is, okay, we have the vote on the school. The people who are there just to vote on the school win. They get up, they start cheering and throwing their hats in the air, they walk out, and then somebody stands up and says, I move to reconsider, and it fails because all the people who didn't want the school are still in the meeting. Now, it sounds like, oh, that's a good idea, but it's really not a good idea because a motion to reconsider requires, at some level, that there's something new that needs to be said about that we forgot to consider something, or we forgot, or the new information has become available since we took that vote and now we need to reconsider it. That's where the job of the moderator gets a little dicey because I have to figure out, is there really a reason to reconsider this, or is this a parliamentary ploy? Are we just responding to the fact that everybody got up and left? So that's keeping me up at night.
Can they reconsider the second night?
It's the same meeting.
So it's the same.
It's the same meeting. So yes.
You just continue the meeting to a time certain, so
the second
meeting's still open.
The same number of people don't come because they figure it's been done.
Yeah.
And they organize a counter move.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a risk everybody has to take. I mean, if I'm not quite as kind as Glenn is about this, we want to get you home kind of stuff. I'm more concerned that you understand that this is the legislative branch of the government, and we're not just concerned with the schools. We've got 30 articles on the annual town meeting, and we have 15 or so on the special town meeting. And all of those things are important. And the government of our town is not just the schools. It's the needs of everyone.
I understand what you're saying. I think that at night, though, it's very difficult for families to get out multiple nights a week. Like, I have twin daughters, they're 3.5. I also have a baby who's 6 months old. It's difficult for me to get places, and it's extremely difficult for me to plan babysitters for a Monday night and a Wednesday night. I understand what you're saying. I think that you should also take families into consideration when you're thinking about multiple nights of town meeting.
I'm not planning on multiple nights. Believe me.
Nobody wants that.
I want to get it
Nobody
done the
wants
first
that.
night.
It's all about
I'm
the people in
complete-
the audience.
But when we're having the discussion, and it's going on and on and on and on, and everybody thinks they have something terribly important to say, and I'm standing up there saying, you know, I think maybe it's all been said. Does anybody have anything new to keep in mind? What I'm trying to do when I'm saying those things is to get you to sit down and vote. I mean, we've discussed it to death already.
See,
And that's why my answer to your question, it's really not a place to get a lot of information. It's really a place to consider all the needs of the town.
And voice your opinion.
And voice
sit
your
down.
opinion, but don't drag it off interminably. I don't want this thing to go on more than one night. I never have. It's just.
Casey, where is the information, just so everybody here can know, where is the information available beforehand so that people can be educated before they get there, so that they don't have to be educated by the meeting instead of prepared?
The Finance Committee prepares a booklet every year before all the town meetings. And so the town meeting starts with the warrant, which is a list of items that we're going to discuss at the town meeting. The warrant is the agenda for the meeting. We can't take up anything that's not on the warrant, but we will take up the things on the warrant one by one. When an item comes up in a meeting, I read the article on the warrant, and then somebody makes a motion. We vote on the motions, but before we vote on the motion, we have discussion. So people can express their pros and their cons. The Finance Committee and the Selectmen work together prior to town meeting to put together the warrant and to make recommendations. And the Finance Committee and the Selectmen don't always agree on their recommendations. Frequently they do, but they don't always. But they discuss it very, very thoroughly. And the Finance Committee prepares this booklet where they put in each of the warrant articles. You won't know what the motions are yet because they're made the night of the meeting. But the warrant article will be in the booklet, and then they give their rationale for why they either support or don't support this particular item. That rationale gives you a lot of information about what the issues are. They're pretty thorough about it. And they also have a lot of information in there. For example, we have some bylaw changes for zoning bylaws which are very long and laborious, and they put those bylaws right in the booklet so that you can read exactly what it means.
I might be optimistic, but the Finance Committee booklet that you're talking about may be posted on the town website by the end of the week, certainly by the beginning of next week, the latest.
And there'll be hard copies at the food mart, the library, here,
and
the town meeting.
Just for future reference, it's not going to help you much now because I think most of these are probably gone, but prior to town meeting, various committees who have an interest in a certain article or whatever will have open forums like this. So if you're really interested in something that's going to be on the agenda, you can go to an open forum and you can discuss it at length and find it. And did you have anything else in mind? Nope.
So that's everybody hear that?
Yeah.
Just vote exactly the way the Board of Selectmen vote, and the meeting will take 5 minutes.
There you go.
It's just that simple.
Simple.
How many, so we should,
thank you.
With some respect.
Spread the word.
Thank you.
And we'll look over too, there's a lot of boards and committees that give reports at this time of the year. And we might ask them to make sure that they keep their remarks a little bit smaller because it's going to be a long meeting.
I think that's good, yeah.
Yeah, but not, not tell them not to speak, but sometimes they go on a little bit more than, like me, I go on a little bit more than I do. But You know what I mean? So we're thinking, we're trying to do the best we possibly can, but it takes people too, you know? I mean, I don't know, honestly, I don't know how much we can do. Because it's so disheartening when we do all these things and we spend, like when you say it's hard to go to a meeting, I'll be at a meeting every night this week away from my family. Because it's my choice, that's the reason why I want to be a selectman, trying to get the word out on some of them for town meetings. And that's what, I'm not complaining, but it's disheartening enough for you, but then when somebody comes and goes, oh, why didn't you have any meetings about this? How did I know about this? Some people don't want to know, but listen, sometimes that's a ploy to vote no. Sometimes they try to say that, to try to start to get the rumblings that there's not enough information out there to try to start a trend. I'm not saying on this, but that's been used before to get people to vote against something.
One just brief item following up on Rick. So this is in the FinCom booklet, but there is a website, Pentucket Project, .org.
Yes, sir. .com.
Pentucket Project. PentucketProject.com. It's factual information. It's not an advocacy site, but there's a huge amount of information.
And those new videos should be going up there pretty soon within the week.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Really.